Hello, and welcome to the meeting of the Rotary E-Club of District 7710 for Tuesday, July 9th, 2019. Thank you for joining us. Riley Mulhern is joining us this evening as our guest speaker. Our program chair, Kevin Primus, will introduce Riley this evening. Kevin?
Riley is a PhD student in the Department of Environmental Science and Engineering at the Gillings School of Global Public Health at UNC Chapel Hill. He worked previously as a technical water quality advisor for a Bolivian nonprofit addressing issues of mining contamination and water quality in rural indigenous communities in Oruro, Bolivia. He is from Denver, Colorado, and received his Bachelor of Science in Physics and Geology from Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois, and his Master of Science in Environmental Engineering from the University of Colorado Boulder. He has worked previously on water projects in Nicaragua and Haiti. So if everyone can make sure they're muted, we're looking forward to hearing Riley Mulhern speak to us tonight. Thanks, Riley.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Good evening, everybody. Like Kevin said, my name is Riley. I'm a PhD student here at UNC Chapel Hill in the Department of Environmental Science Engineering. And before coming to UNC, I lived for 2 years in the Bolivian altiplano, which is this landscape you see in this title slide here, as a volunteer with a small nonprofit there, which I look forward to being able to share with you all about in a minute. But first, I want to say thank you to Kevin and to this group for the opportunity to present some of this work tonight. It's really always a treat for me to be able to share with Bolivia about with others, but I'm especially grateful to be able to participate in this e-club. So thanks so much. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm going to be presenting to you today about some of the water and health challenges experienced by communities in Bolivia, as well as a new project that I'm helping my Bolivian colleagues to develop to better provide water quality services to communities in need. This work that I'm going to be presenting to you is a collaboration between this small Bolivian nonprofit called CEPA, which stands for the Centro de Ecología y Pueblos Andinos, or the Center for Ecology and Andean Peoples, which is the organization that I worked with during my time there. You can see their logo at the top of the screen there, as well as a Canadian organization called the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology, or COST, which is the second logo on this slide. So I'll provide more info on each of these organizations and how the partnership is developed later on. But first I want to start with this picture here. To provide us a little bit of context for the rest of this talk. So this is a picture of me walking across a dried lake bed, just a short drive from where CEPA works and where I lived. The abandoned boat is a fishing boat that was once used by a local indigenous group called the Oruro people. I show you this picture to give us sort of a starting point for what it means to be addressing water issues in this area of Bolivia. If you haven't been to Bolivia, you may think of a lush jungle and the Amazon basin when you hear of it, but that is actually only a small part of the country. A large part is arid and mountainous and experiences extreme water security challenges due to climate change and pollution from mining. In this map, you can see the drastic difference in topography throughout the country from one side to the other. The yellow star marks the location of where this photo was taken in the high plains, an area known as the altiplano, at an elevation of over 12,000 feet above sea level. That's, for reference, that's about twice the elevation of Denver. So this specific lake bed, though, that I'm walking across used to be enormous. It's called Lake Popo and used to cover an area of almost 400 square miles. Here's a satellite image of the lake at its full extent as recently as 2013. The lake was an economic and ecological resource for the entire region for centuries, but it began to dry up in 2015, and by 2016, the year I arrived in Bolivia, it was almost completely gone, and you can see the extent in the satellite imagery there. To make matters worse, this area of Bolivia is also a legacy mining region with hundreds of mines scattered throughout this landscape. And this photo is a picture of the Wanuni mine, about an hour from Lake Popo, which was once the largest subsurface tin mine in the world, and actually still employs over 3,000 workers. This mine, along with hundreds of others throughout the region, releases acidic mine drainage at a pH of about 2.5, or more acidic than lemon juice. This drainage goes directly into the environment. This contaminates surface water and groundwater for thousands of people. The organization Pure Earth, or formerly known as the Blacksmith Institute, has a toxic site identification program and lists this specific mine. They estimate that almost 20,000 people are at risk of hazardous metals exposure from this mine alone. As a result of these insults to water resources in the region, as well as poor and non-existent water infrastructure, and in non-existent water treatment, for that matter, for both rural and urban areas, many indigenous communities that SEPA works with rely on extremely unsafe or hazardous water resources, such as shallow hand-dug wells that you see here that are easily contaminated by mine waste, or these shallow earthen basins called vihinas to collect rainwater, which often dry up during the year. Some communities have to walk or bike many miles to access any drinking water at all. So all of this has serious health implications, as well as for livelihood, access to education, as well as social and cultural cohesion in these indigenous communities, all of which is what SEPA tries to address. Here's a picture of the front door of SEPA's offices in the city of Oruro, which is one of the largest city centers in the region, where for the past 20 years, SEPA has worked to be a resource for indigenous communities to promote human rights, access to education, cultural autonomy, economic sustainability, and environmental justice. In the last few years, given the region's water crisis, water security has become a crucial element underlying SEPA's entire mission. One of the ways SEPA has worked to address water in these communities is to improve health and protect traditional ways of life, has been through rainwater harvesting. Here's a photo of some of SEPA's staff training a local community to install a rainwater harvesting system when I first arrived as a part of a 4-year project to install 36 tanks in especially high-need communities. Here's another photo of this training installing the gutter system. However, one of the limitations of SEPA's work at the time when I arrived was their inability to monitor water quality in any way, to determine both if certain sources, including these rainwater tanks, were safe to drink from, and or if they had potentially been contaminated by any sort of mine waste. SEPA felt that they needed this type of technical water quality information to better advocate to local authorities for environmental services, as well as educate communities about health risks related to water, so that they can make informed decisions about which water sources to utilize or to avoid, and what type of treatment to perform if necessary. So when I arrived in Bolivia in 2016 as a service worker with the organization Mennonite Central Committee, some of you may be familiar with Mennonite Central Committee, or known as MCC. I was placed at SEPA to support this specific need of addressing water quality concerns. As Kevin mentioned, I had recently completed my master's in environmental engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I had done WASH fieldwork previously in Nicaragua and Haiti. So I started to work with some of the local staff to develop a field-based water quality laboratory that SEPA could use to both monitor the quality of the rainwater tanks and to provide water quality testing services to other communities that were concerned. So this slide shows some of the equipment that SEPA now owns as a result of that work. Their laboratory, and for those perhaps other engineers in the audience, their laboratory now includes tests for over 20 different water quality parameters, including microbial indicator organisms, arsenic, nitrate, a range of heavy metals, free and total chlorine, and standard parameters like pH and conductivity. At the same time, I trained SEPA staff in the use and maintenance of each of these pieces of equipment to sustainably manage the laboratory long term. Similarly, SEPA began to partner with COST, which, as I mentioned previously, stands for the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology. They're a large nonprofit based out of Calgary, to deliver trainings in the proper use of this equipment and interpretation of these results to additional community groups and leaders. COST's mission is specifically to provide technical training and consulting in water and sanitation for the poor and developing countries. And they've developed an extensive curricula on drinking water quality testing and household water treatment. This slide that you see here is a flyer developed by SEPA and COST together to promote their most recent week-long training in Oruro earlier this year in March. Here are a few photos from one of those courses. So on the left, a woman learns how to measure turbidity using various methods. And on the right, one of SEPA's trained instructors leads a group in the use of a pH meter. Here's another example of a group of women identifying possible sources of contamination using flashcards. And here, a group of students, local university students, learns how to use a turbidimeter in the field. And in this photo, they are actually measuring mine waste, as you can see, the dark sort of gray color of the river behind them. So SEPA is now one of the only organizations in the entire region with a fully functioning field-based water quality kit. This allows for regular monitoring of drinking water sources and known areas of contamination, as well as rapid deployment in emergency scenarios and important educational experiences for community leaders. Even the local university and the local Office of Environmental Protection in Oruro have begun to rely on SEPA for these tools. I can't stress this enough, how unique these tools are for this area. Here you can see some of their equipment in action in their central office, where they've set up a sort of rudimentary laboratory space, and in the field here in these photos. In this slide, a SEPA technician is sampling a water source using a sterile membrane filtration method from the back of SEPA's pickup truck. And in these, SEPA technicians show community leaders how to sample a water well on the right, and on the left, a community leader. If you notice the hat, the tall hat that he is wearing signifies that he is the indigenous authority for the community. He's learning how to take a water sample from a stream. The community-based nature of SEPA's work is also especially important as it develops trust with communities that have historically been excluded and taken advantage of, as well as contributes to local capacity and knowledge around drinking water quality, environmental protection, and public health. I've seen many infrastructure-based projects fail in many different countries, leaving behind abandoned water systems, but I believe SEPA's focus on local capacity building around water by providing access to water testing and education has the potential to make a permanent difference in these communities. So in these last few slides, I want to share some of the initial impact of these efforts and present where SEPA hopes to go next. Since SEPA began its water quality work in 2017, they have tested over 430 water samples, or that's about 4 new water sources each week. This represents over 2,000 separate analyses, with over 500 of those being arsenic tests alone, as they've discovered that arsenic is a particular concern in their area. They've also co-facilitated 3 week-long trainings, drinking water quality testing trainings, together with COST, representing over 60 individuals fully trained so far, and they hope to keep up this trend and even increase this trend. And this is not counting informal trainings that they've delivered locally without COST's help. Through this work and by posting results on their blog and in local news outlets, SEPA has begun to put water quality concerns on the map for the broader public and governmental authorities in their area. They've begun to be recognized as a resource with requests for water testing from new communities that learned about SEPA through word of mouth, and even have received requests for support from local governments. Along these lines, SEPA has developed a public database for all the water quality information that they're beginning to compile, and they've posted it in an interactive mapping tool on their website. So anyone can go online to their website and look up on the map their area and see if any water quality tests have been performed, and they can see all of the parameters and data that they've collected. Finally, since starting to monitor the water quality of rainwater collected in the tanks, SEPA has detected the presence of arsenic in this harvested rainwater, which had never been identified as a concern in the altiplano previously. So together with my help and other volunteers, SEPA published an article that you can see here in the journal Science of the Total Environment regarding these findings. And this was published just last month, which vastly increases the awareness regarding the risk of arsenic in Bolivia on an international level. So building on these successes, SEPA has been developing its strategic plan for the coming years and has identified this budding water quality work as an important area for growth. Specifically, SEPA hopes to formalize its water services into a regional water quality center to expand its impact to reach additional communities around the Altiplano with affordable and accessible way of knowing and understanding their water. Such a center would also include regular publications for the communities and for the public with educational materials and monitoring results. Additionally, SEPA and COST have drafted a strategic plan to work together to facilitate regular workshops and trainings to reach a wider audience, including local governmental officials and water treatment operators, so that water management in the region becomes more sustainable. And long-term, SEPA is also interested in pursuing local certification as a water quality laboratory. COST has helped grassroots organizations obtain certification elsewhere and would be an important resource for SEPA in that process. Here is a snapshot of a pamphlet, just part of a pamphlet that I helped SEPA develop to brand this work under the title "Cómo está tu agua?" or "How is your water?" Using very easy to understand language for the local area that they've begun to pass out to communities to promote these services. As this flyer here says, water quality analysis for communities at the top there. So to accomplish these goals, SEPA is actually seeking new funding partners to come alongside this work and through a longer term funding relationship, which is a large part of my continued role in volunteering my time for SEPA. And I truly believe in what they are doing and the potential that they have to make a sustained impact, which is why I was excited for the opportunity to present to you today, one of the reasons. Specific funding needs include hiring the full-time laboratory manager. Currently, SEPA employs a young woman named Carla, who I trained personally. She's an incredibly bright and talented person, but SEPA can only support her a few days a week and won't be able to renew her contract in the coming year. Second, they're in need of physical improvements to their laboratory space. Currently, the laboratory is housed in a back shed, but needs a more secure and appropriate space with running water if it is continued to grow. Third, they're in need of subsidizing water quality testing for communities. SEPA offers these water tests to communities for an extremely low cost by subsidizing it through their grants, and they need to ensure that they can continue to do this to reach the highest need communities. And fourth, facilitating and hosting regular trainings and workshops in partnership with COST costs money. So since COST and SEPA started working together, COST has already invested over $40,000 in time and travel expenses from their unrestricted funds to send technical WASH trainers to Bolivia. However, to continue to grow over the next 3 years, COST and SEPA estimate they will need to raise approximately $100,000 for a 3-year funding cycle. I received some initial interest on this proposal from other Rotarians, and I would welcome any questions or feedback that your club has. My hope is that a partnership between SEPA and COST and Rotary could contribute to a long-term impact in Bolivia. I believe these three organizations share similar goals of fighting disease, providing clean water, and supporting education, as well as similar values of service and equality. So finally, I'd like to close in saying that I was recently awarded a Daniel A. Oken WASH Service Travel Award, a student travel award, through UNC Chapel Hill, to return to Bolivia in November of this coming year to support SEPA with their next water quality training, which could be a great opportunity for any Rotarians to also visit SEPA with me if there is an interest. So regardless of whether that is a possibility, however, I'd like to close by saying thank you again for the opportunity to share. Thanks to Kevin and Dilshad Jah from at UNC for the introduction to this group. I hope a piece of this was new or interesting to you. And if you'd like to learn more about SEPA, their website is listed here, along with my Medium profile, where I posted some of my writing about my time in Bolivia. So thank you again, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Riley. That was a wonderful presentation, and we appreciate you bringing your presentation to the group. We'll open up to the group for any questions. So if you'd like to unmute and start your audio and video. Riley, a question for you. I know you mentioned, Rotary and partnership. What kinds of things can we do to help you as our club?
Well, I guess I would like to learn more about the kinds of things that your club does and the activities that you're involved in, as potentially some of the other projects that you support. And I would love to learn more about that as well. But before I answer that fully, I guess, and I think that the way I understand Rotary, I'm beginning to learn more about it in the past year or so through conversations with Dilshad and Kevin. I would also potentially appreciate other connections and introductions you think may be helpful in presenting this work and finding partners for it.
Riley, we do have, as you probably through Kevin know, that the Rotary area of focus, we have areas of focus, and one of them is water. So you definitely have a good, area that we actually support as an organization. As a club, as our E-Club, we've actually supported water projects internationally for several years. And we're actually in the midst of one right now. My name is Rhonda. I'm the immediate past president, and I'd be happy to help you with completing an application for a grant to look at this and talk to you about partners. And I've been through the whole process, and it does take quite a bit, especially if you're looking for the funds that you're talking about. So I'm not signing our club up. I'm just saying that in general, just to understand the process, I'd be happy to walk you through and show you how to present yourself as far as funding.
Certainly, that would be very helpful.
It sounds like you have a lot of great content that would just work perfectly in the format that we need to present you. So, but again, as you said that you have other clubs, that's going to be the key. Is you need definitely to have a club in Bolivia. So if you don't, you need to find one, because in order to do an international grant, you have to have a club in the host country, which would in your case be Bolivia. So that's like number one. And then there's other things. So I'll be happy to talk to you offline.
That would be great. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Anyone else have any questions for Riley?
Hey, Riley, this is Kevin.
Yeah.
Hey, I may have missed it, but can you talk about what sort of things a community can do once they find that their water is contaminated? What are their mitigation strategies? Do they just try to steer away from those sources and look to other sources? What do you suggest people do?
Great question. I think it falls under two categories. And it depends on what the community's need is or what they're requesting. So some communities come to us and to SEPA with a concern about a mine or some sort of contamination occurring in their area that they believe is causing either their family or their land or their animals harm that is not being treated responsibly by an upstream industry or mining operation. So these communities have usually long since abandoned their local water sources like wells or rivers for drinking water. And so these people often will go, they'll either have vehicles or they'll walk miles to get drinking water elsewhere, but they still feel that they are being harmed, that their land is being harmed by some sort of contamination, and they want to be able to document that. And that power of documenting some sort of contamination alone is extremely important to these communities and empowering. So for decades, and these communities have been told, often by mining companies, that there is no problem, that there is no contamination occurring, that the water is fine, and that often occurs because there's no way of refuting those claims that a mining company may make. So that's the first one in terms of actually just providing access to information and documenting these harms to the environment and to water quality is a huge advocacy tool, a grassroots advocacy tool for communities, which is a long process, and it then requires SEPA's other skill set, which they have a whole legal team, and they actually help communities in that work as well. So that's not an overnight fix type of thing, but it does really help communities kind of have a sense of ownership over their situation and get on a path toward change. The second thing I'll say is that there's sometimes when you receive we receive requests from other types of communities that maybe have some more infrastructure in place, where they have a community well and they have a spring system, or they have some rainwater harvesting, and they actually want to know if there is some sort of contamination of their drinking water specifically, and of their multiple drinking water sources. And in that situation, we can test for different things that are more relevant to actual drinking water risk, and actually help them to make decisions about which water should they be drinking and which should they not. And that actually happens quite often in these areas, in that these communities are reliant on multiple different sources throughout the year, and so it's helpful for them to have information in that decision making. And then additionally, that allows them to actually put in place some sort of water treatment. So actually being able to test for water quality, I think, and we have found, is the first step to be able to talk to communities about implementing some sort of household or community level water treatment. Without more of a basic understanding of why something is a risk or contamination, water treatment options won't often work. So it allows them to then ask follow-up questions, and SEPA is working on providing additional resources and educational tools about water treatment as well. So that's a sort of a long answer, but I could sum it up in saying those two things. One is advocacy, and two is decision-making and water treatment.
Thank you, Riley.
Great answer.
Thank you. Yes, we really appreciate that. Riley, if I could ask you to unshare your screen, We
Oh,
would
I
like
thought I
to
did that. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought I did that, but
Um,
let me unshare here. Here we go.
Perfect. And Riley, I would like to thank you and on behalf of the E-Club for your presentation this evening and spending time with us, sharing your experiences.
Excuse me, you're not
And
sharing.
I'm sorry, I'm not sharing.
No.
Sorry. I'm sharing with myself. I'm sorry. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Thank you. Oh, that's not it.
It's coming. Yep. We can. No.
All right, I'm switching a lot of screens, so excuse me. Thank you, Riley. Really wanted to say thank you on behalf of the E-Club of District 7710 for sharing your experiences and insights. And we would like to present to you a certificate of appreciation virtually on behalf of the club.
We're not seeing it, Kathy. Just.
I am so sorry.
We see the agenda. Just. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I am, wait a minute, let me see. That, no. I am very sorry that that is not sharing. Can you see it now?
Right. We see the Google Drive and we see thank you on the side window.
And you don't see Riley?
No, we don't see the PowerPoint presentation. But that's fine. We can actually send it to.
I was going to say, Riley, we will send you this very nice virtual certificate that only I am able to see.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you tonight.
Thank you so much. And my guess is that you cannot see the four-way test either, correct? Would anyone like to join, apologies again, would anyone like to lead with the four-way test from memory?
We could say it together.
That would be awesome, Eve. Would you like to lead us?
Sure. The four-way test
of the things we think, say, or do.
First, is
it the truth? Second,
it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And
fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yay.
Thank you. And that is Rotary for Tuesday, July 9th, 2018.
Congratulations,